pleasure to be here. The event that the Heritage Council and the Irish Wall Towns Network ran in Carrick-on-Shore 2 years ago. So can you hear me back? Yeah. Okay. Was really powerful, and we were really trying out this kind of idea of going to a town and bringing people together and seeing, just if you brought a bunch of people into a room and you asked them to try accentuate or look at what's positive or what are the assets in the town, how can you build on that? And it worked really well. Now a lot of it was a tribute to Liam's work and perseverance on it. So in a sense we're trying that again. I work for the Heritage Council. We're a small state agency, and we were set up by Michael D back in 1995, so we're 21 years young, officially to propose policies and priorities for the national heritage. Now effectively what that means is we advise the Minister and we give grants, and we set up projects and do initiatives. And one of the things we've been working on for the last 2-3 years is Irish towns, Ireland's towns. How can they use their heritage to survive, to prosper, to grow, and to be a good place to live, and to be a good place for people to visit. And we'll hear more about that from Josephine as the evening goes on. And about 2 years ago we partnered with Fáilte Ireland and the then Department of Arts, Heritage and Gaeltacht, Minister Humphrey's department, to try a project called the Historic Town Initiative. Really, what I was going to talk about here tonight is what we learned from that. We learned quite a bit. Westport was one of our towns, so you'll hear a bit about that from Simon. So I won't go too hard on Westport, but we learned a couple of really good lessons out of it that we think are applicable. So there's Youghal throwing a festival, there's Youghал's Clock Tower, there's part of Listowel in County Kerry. 3 towns broadly similar in size to Bandon. And I have to say, I spent the best part of today in Bandon. It wasn't a town I knew pretty well until today, going around it. I have to say I enjoyed it, and I really liked what I saw, particularly the hinterland. I work for the Heritage Council, so naturally enough, I'm going to say something about heritage. Heritage has been really interesting in the last couple of years because there's a kind of new, an overused term, a new paradigm emerging. And to sum it up, conservation is becoming more people-centered. Old approaches sought to protect heritage by isolating it from daily life. There's a new thought out there that you have to give buildings use. Buildings have to stay in use. You have to keep people in them. You have to maintain the rhythm of daily life. New approach, and this is from the EU Commission. New approaches on making it fully part of the local community. Sites are given a second life and meaning and speak to contemporary needs and concerns. So it's about keeping assets in use. And we would very much use the term heritage assets. But is there an economic aspect? I mean, obviously enough, in the Heritage Council, we would say that heritage is important for its own sake. But what we found during the boom was, and there are very good facts in support of it, that heritage is actually a good economic driver as well. We surveyed a report in 2012. Heritage supports in excess of 30,000 full-time equivalent jobs. That's 30,000 jobs. 1.5% of total employment. In 2013, 27% of EU travellers indicated that heritage is a key factor in choosing a destination. Distinctive historic places have been shown over and over again to be interesting places for creative startups, high-end retail. And there are a number of towns in Ireland that have cottoned onto this. I'll show you some examples in a minute. Westport is a really good example Simon will talk about. Lismore in County Waterford is really interesting. Listowel is starting to wake up as well to the power of this. And there's a couple of things that we drew out of it that we learned, which I'll share with you. And then the EU recently said, there's probably too much text in this slide, but I'll sum it up. Heritage, the heart of what it means to be European. It has been discovered by both governments and citizens as a means of improving economic performance, people's lives and living environment. So that's very much that kind of new thinking or new background. So 2-3 years ago we started this Historic Towns initiative with Listowel. We've got this lovely castle here. Really interesting literary heritage. The place of John B. Keane, famous for horses. There's Westport House. This is Youghal. This is Westport House around 2000, 2001. It was getting a new roof on it. The Heritage Council helped fund that with the family. But and Simon will dwell on this a little bit more. One of the key lessons we learned out of this is make the most of the assets that you have and try and make sure you can reconnect them back to the town. So there's Listowel. These amazing, and in a sense, you've got to use what you have. In Listowel, they've got these amazing McAuliffe early 20th century plaster busts and facades all up and down the street. And they're distinct, they're colourful. And what they did was they started celebrating them, they produced a trail. They started painting them, caring from them, knocking on the door of the people that actually owned this pub, the Maid of Erin, and saying, do you know what, that's actually really nice, that's really important, can we help you look after that, can we help you care for it? Because the cumulative effect or impact of all of these and all these traditional beautiful shop fronts, as you walk through it, especially if you're from America or anywhere else other than Ireland where you're not used to seeing these things, is it can make quite a really strong visual impression. And then the literary heritage here in Listowel, they made the most out of the connection with John B. Keane and a couple of other writers, Brendan Kennelly, Brian McMahon. Yeah, that was the name I was reaching for. And they have, it's this using this intangible heritage there. But what was really interesting, if you go down there, ask for a tour by the retired bank manager. The retired bank manager from Abbeyfield. And he gave a tour, I have to say, it was one of the best tours I ever got anywhere. It was so powerful. He put such passion into it. And then he roped a couple of people in on the tour and he made them do a performance of John B. Keane, a little set. And it was brilliant. And it was bringing people in. So they had that well worked out. And then they've got the horses, the racing, and that's a fantastic festival. And then obviously this open square, which they need to make a little bit more of. So the upshot of this was they come up with a plan, and we helped them with this. A Listowel Heritage Community Regeneration Strategy. It sets out a whole lot of actions. Shape a better place to live and work, improve attractions, grow events, promote a cohesive welcome, activate and link assets, and unlock new opportunities. And Listowel is on a kind of a really important crossing route between Kerry and the northern parts of the Wild Atlantic Way. So they were thinking, how can we make our place sticky? In other words, how can we get people to stop? How can we get people moving between, say, Kerry and Burren to actually think of us? So it was about making their place interesting. So that plan is due to be launched hopefully before Christmas. It's probably December, but it's a start, and I'll come back on that in a moment. Youghal is a really interesting seaside town. It went through a period of deindustrialisation around late 90s, early years of this millennium. A couple of factories closed down, the textile, the carpet, and they looked around and they saw, well, what do we have? And they've got this amazing streetscape, probably one of the best circuits of a medieval walled town in Ireland. You can actually see it. It's as good as any of the continental or Italian circus that you might see on your holidays. It's just so well preserved. So we've been helping them with some conservation works to the wall for the last 10 odd years or so. But what we've really seen there is the local authority, around about 2002 or 3, came to us and said, we'd like to start a heritage regeneration strategy. And we said, oh, okay, that's interesting. Because it was something that had been pioneered and developed in the UK. And they'd looked at it and said, well, we've got lots of heritage here. Our town needs regeneration. Can we use the heritage to help bring tourists, visitors back? But not only that, to make it interesting for the people who live here. So they went for a couple of quick wins. Started helping people cover the cost of paying for painting schemes. And there was a very active town clerk there. And he'd say to people that had really interesting traditional shop fronts, that's a really nice shop front, will you make sure you look after that? So again, it was the approach. Looking after historic buildings, retaining the windows, and Simon will talk more about the importance of these windows, just to pattern the kind of cumulative effect they have when you see just proper sash windows in a historic town. So a lot of quick wins like that, and that was a huge success story in Youghal. And then the local authority took on a lease of the church, the medieval parish church in Youghal, which has this amazing 17th century tomb to Richard Boyle. And I know that there's a strong Richard Boyle connection here in Bandon as well. And they're really making a lot of it. And maybe there's a thought there. There's a Boyle connection here, there's a Boyle connection in Youghal, there's a Boyle connection in Lismore. There might be something there to build on in terms of branding, in terms of linkages, in terms of sharing knowledge, because they're two interesting towns that have kind of really stepped up to the plate and are really trying. And then the other thing they had was this 18th century clock tower. And they've recently, we helped them with a feasibility study on this a good while ago, but they've recently kitted it out for tourism again with help from Culture Ireland. So that's due to, it should be open, in fact it's open now I think. Yeah. So they're trying. They're really trying. What they're using their historic assets here. So it's about, I think the first floor is about Youghal. It was a jail at one point, so there's a section on its use as a jail, and then the top is just amazing in terms of views of the town and the seaside, and it's quite a picturesque town. So when we were doing this historic towns initiative, we came up with a document just to try and give guidance to towns. If anybody wants it, we can have it. It's on our website. The first step is very simple. Understand the town and its heritage. What have you got? How interesting is it? What's there? Build up local support. Events like tonight. Wall Towns Day. Bring people in. What are the challenges? But equally, where are the opportunities? What are the strengths of your town? Develop a clear vision. Then come up with a plan. And then review and monitor. Now I know that sounds very simple and very easy. There's actually a lot of work in that. But that's exactly what they've done in Listowel. And there's what Simon will tell you about the plan-led approach that they've used in Westport as well. Why should you do this? This is a survey that Culture Ireland did on these towns, Listowel, Westport and Youghal, about 2 years ago. And when they surveyed a lot of visitors, this isn't coming from Ian Doyle who works for the Heritage Council telling you heritage is important. This is based on talking face to face with visitors. And what were the factors most likely for those visitors to recommend that place to their friends, relatives, the people they work with and so on? Well, some of the highest scores were visual presentations of buildings or monuments, the quality of interpretation at museums, the availability of nighttime entertainment or the range of local craft shops. Now, I would put it to you that they're the kind of things that if you have a plan and a little bit of local effort and you make the right kind of approach to national bodies, to the local authority, to bodies like the Heritage Council, that's what we can help you with. But the impact of doing those things can be quite strong. So, what have we learned? Well, first of all, the importance of a plan. Simon will tell you about the importance of a plan in Westport. In this case, for the HTI, Youghal is working on their plan. Listowel, ready to launch it. Westport, Simon will update you on that. And there are funding opportunities now. In a sense, we've been through, touch wood, said Ian, we've been through the really bad years when there wasn't a lot of money for projects like this. But things are starting to loosen up. For example, the Heritage Council, we got an increase in their budget for the first time this year. The Minister for Arts, Heritage and the rest of her brief, which is interesting because it includes regional and rural development, recently announced the Town and Village Renewal Scheme. I think it's about 400,000 per local authority. So that's an important step. Yeah, it'll never be enough, but it's a step, and it's a step in the right direction. There's the CEDRA plan for the redevelopment of rural Ireland with REDS, Rural Economic Development Zones. There's money behind that as well. And then through the Irish Wall Towns Network, through the Heritage Council, there are funding opportunities there as well. So there are opportunities there. And then finally, I think this is my last slide. Yeah, there's a lot of interest in towns. You only have to, probably less so now, but there was a time you only had to open the Irish Times And there was a journalist from Dublin that got to some town in the west of Ireland, and they were saying how bad things were and how something would have to change. I think particularly since the last election, the government has really cottoned on to that, and the fate of our towns seems to be far higher on the political agenda, and that's why we're seeing a little bit more funding coming into it. But what can you guys control? Well, what we've learned is local leadership is critical. The local community saying, actually we want to do this, this and this is our plan, this is what we'd like to try. Structure for partnership. What do I mean by that? I mean a group, a constituted group that's there, that's organised. I'll give you an example. At the risk now of stealing too much information from Simon, I was in Westport and I met this old lady, and to me she looked like she could have just been anybody's granny. But I got talking to her over a cup of tea. She knew TOOS funding inside out. She knew Tidy Towns scoring schemes inside out. She knew the Rural Social Scheme inside out. She knew the leader system inside out. She was part of a structure, the Tidy Towns group, that was such, it had such momentum and such goodwill and such positive energy behind it. It was, I left, I was seriously impressed with the guys that I had met. And they had come up with this shared vision and a plan-led approach to deliver. Government agencies love plans. If you come to us with a plan, we're able to say, oh yeah, that's how that fits in, rather than something that looks like it was dreamed up on the back of an envelope. And if you can show that there was consultation, that there's consensus, it's not somebody on a solo run, even better. Community-based, not just government. Government is contracted in Ireland in the last number of years, in your local authorities, in state agencies. The idea of the government doing everything, it's not really realistic at the moment. But where there's a community that we can work in partnership with, that's really where it helps. And then quick wins, whether that's just the facade painting, like you see in Youghal or other towns, and then crucially, utilise existing assets. What do I mean by that? Use what heritage you have, to use it well. Your public spaces, the access, the connections, the movements. So again, what Simon will tell you in Westport is they reconnected the estate and the house back to the town. And you see that in other towns as well. And then finally, using all that, heritage can provide a competitive advantage, and it can really make a difference. Thank you.